Hi, my name is Boris, and in today's beginner's tutorial we're going to go from this progression all the way to something like this. And just a quick reminder, if you like what you're seeing in this tutorial, make sure to subscribe. We're making all kinds of Ableton tutorials for beginners. And if you'd like to learn Ableton a bit more, check out our Ableton Beginners course, which is going to give you all the knowledge you need to confidently start building and finishing your tracks. Alright, so let's get started with our chords. Alright, so as you can see here, we're going from this very simple progression through something just a little bit more complex, all the way to a little bit more fancy and elaborate voicings. And we're also going to throw in a synth at the end. Let's just start from the beginning. We have the grand piano loaded up, so it's the standard sound. I'm just going to disable all the other effects. Just the most basic stock grand piano. We're just adding the reverb effect. And we are moving this one step up. This doesn't really make any difference by now. I just kept it here because this chord progression is actually part of a template, which I'm also going to link in the description. Right, so we have a very basic grand piano. I can just delete all the other effects. Okay, so let's make a new MIDI clip. I'll just select this area, right click, go to Insert Empty MIDI Clips. And now it's open. I can change the size of this edit window. Also, I can change the size of this velocity bar at the bottom. I'm just going to make this much bigger so that we can see everything that's going on. And the first thing we need to do is just choose the scale. This is a really amazing function of Ableton Live 11. We've got a really big selection of scales. All that you need to do is just click this scale button here, choose C major, that should be actually enabled by default, and we're just going to write this progression in C major. But there's a lot more options and I really encourage you to check all of these out. Okay, so we are just going to add some root notes and we are going to later build our chords on top of that. Okay, so for the first chord, let's choose F1. And I'm just going to extend this over one bar. We have 4 bars in this progression, so a very standard length. Let's also add a note like this onto A. Now let's go to C. And now I'll duplicate this note by clicking Command on Mac or Control on Windows and D. I'll make it shorter. We can actually divide it by 2 by pressing this button over here. I'll move it to E. So 2 steps up from that, we're just going 2 steps up from F to A, 2 steps up to C, 2 steps up to E. So that's a really nice progression. And we can also go to G. So always 2 steps up here. Right, so let's hear what we have. We have an ascending line, and building chords on top of this is very, very easy. Just because we're going to be selecting a lot of notes, I don't want you to hear all the this whole cluster, and I'm just going to disable the note previews here. Let's select all of these notes and let's form triads. All you need to do is just copy all of the notes 2 steps up and then 4 steps up. Let's select all of these. I'm going to press Alt and drag all of these notes 2 steps up. Let's hear what we have. And we can do the same thing just like this. This already sounds like a chord progression because we have the basic triads. And now for level 1, we can also take these notes at the end and maybe lower them by an octave. That just means that from E2, we're going to go to E1. All you need to do is just select these 2 chords, hold Shift and press the down arrow. And now let's play it once again. So as you can hear, this already starts sounding a little bit more cohesive because we're not really ascending all the way and we have some movement that's a little bit more interesting at the end. But I still wouldn't use something like this in a track. I think it just needs something slightly more original in order to be usable. Okay, in step 2, we're going to just slightly modify these chords in order to make them sound much fuller. That's a really simple trick. For this step, all we're going to do is just select the thirds, so the middle notes of all of these chords. I'm just going to hold Shift in order to select more than one note. So selecting the middle notes, and we're going to move these an octave up. Holding Shift and clicking the up arrow moves these notes one octave higher. And this is going to give us a much more open feel because we are spreading the notes much more. And also because we are moving the thirds, we really accentuate the minor or major feel of these chords. But that's not really crucial. I think you need to just hear what this does. So let's play it. And as you can hear, we have even a nice melody going on. At the beginning, we have something that's ascending. And then we have something a bit more interesting at the end. Okay, so you would normally call this an open voicing. And now also, just remember that we are not really stuck with what we have. There's a lot of modifications that are really easy to do and that are going to make this sound much more cohesive. One thing we can do is, for example, as you can see, we have the C note in the first chord over here. In the second chord, it's all the way up there. And in the third chord, it's actually the first note. And because this note belongs to all of these three chords, we can actually use it and repeat it in the higher registers here. So if I take this note and duplicate it an octave higher, and if I take this note and duplicate it all the way here as well, we are going to still play the same chords, but with just an added consistent note at the top. Let's just hear what that sounds like. And let's compare it to what we had before. Before it was just the same shape that's repeated in all of these chords. This is just slightly more elaborate. This just makes it a little bit more unexpected especially when the third chord hits here, in my opinion. Okay, so as you can see, making these really basic chords with the third moved all the way up, that's really, really easy. But for step 3, we're going to do something a bit more advanced. Okay, so for step 3, let's just revert back to the beginning stage. So we just have the basic triads, and let's quickly go over the concept of voices and extensions. And bear with me, even if it sounds slightly complex at first, this really, really pays off because this is where the magic happens with creating awesome, elaborate sounding chord progressions. Okay, so every chord consists of different voices. For example, here we have the C chord. And this chord consists of voice 1, which is C. We're not playing voice 2, D. We are playing voice 3, which is E. We are not playing any voice 4, but we have voice 5, G. So we are playing the first, the third, and the fifth. Now, we are not limited to only the first, third, and fifth. We could actually add all of the different numbers here. So we could add the second. Okay, so here's what it sounds like with the second. A little bit of a cluster. Let's try the 4. Also a little bit of a cluster, but what if we try the 6? Now that's a bit more interesting. Let's try the 7. Okay, and that just sounds beautiful to me. So the 7th is a really popular extension. This just sounds beautiful with almost every chord. We can actually also do an 8th. So that's an octave. We could also try something like a 9. We're even extending the chords beyond the first octave. And maybe even adding the 7. And that's just beautiful. Okay, so the 7 and the 9 are really, really important. They add a lot of color. And also voices 4 and 6, that's really cool to remember. They also can be very, very useful for making these clusters that can sound very elaborate when they are placed in the right context. Okay, so let's go back here. We are going to skip some of the voices that we have and some of the chords we are going to extend. So let's get started. Chord number 1, we have the F chord. So first of all, we're going to add the 9th extension. So not the 7, but the 9th. And let's take the 3rd and the 5th and move them up by an octave. Wow, that's really beautiful. Okay, so a really cool first chord. Let's move on to the second one. So the A chord. So here we're just going to add the 7th. And the 3rd we're going to move up by an octave. So as you can see, we are repeating the C here. And these two chords together. Wow, and as you can hear, keeping this note at the top and playing this beautiful 7th chord here, that just sounds like a perfect continuation of the first chord. Let's move on to the 3rd one, this regular C major chord here. Here we can add the 8th, so also the C, and for the first note, just so that it doesn't sound so basic, we can move this down actually by an octave to add a more bassy feel. So here's what it sounds like. Very grand, and let's hear that in context. Right, so we just have 2 more chords, so let's get started with the E chord. Okay, so we are just going to add the 7th first. We're just going to remove the 5th. We're not going to use it. The 1st we are going to put up by an octave by duplicating it. So here's what this sounds like now. And the 3rd, as well as the 7th, we're going to move up by an octave. So here's what that sounds like. That's really beautiful to me. And as you can see, we can do a lot of stunts here. We can move some things up, some things down. We can skip some notes, we can add some extensions and also move them around just so that it fits with all the other chords. And let's play that in context. Right, so we just have the final chord and we want to do it in a way that it loops back nicely to the first one. Right, so for this one, we are just going to add the 6 and the 4. We are removing the 5th. And let's move these notes around a bit. So the 4 and the 6, we're going to move up by an octave. And the 3rd, let's also move it up. Right, and maybe let's just go back to the first one. And with the first chord, we can do something a bit more interesting actually. We could take the G, which is the 9th, and put that up by an octave. And let's hear that all the way again. And something really simple also that we can do is taking one of the chords and playing it a bit earlier. So let's take this chord, shorten it slightly, and let's take this chord and play it here. Maybe that's going to be helpful with a metronome. So that just adds a tiny bit of groove to our progression. And this way it's going to sound much more interesting in the actual track when we have a kick drum going on or any other drum pattern. Right, so we could actually take this synth, let's unfreeze it. Here's what we have. This is just wavetable that's playing a saw wave. We also have the pitch device here that's just moving our progression one step up. We are using the unison mode with 8 voices in the shimmer option. And we have some effects on top. So here's without the effects. First of all, we're adding reverb, the regular Ableton reverb. Then we are using some EQ to roll off some of the highs and cut some of the lows. And then we have a shimmer reverb, which just adds that wow effect. And basically it can be used to move the reverb up by an octave, which is really sparkly and shimmery. And let's copy this MIDI that we've made onto this track, and we can actually extend it to make it longer. It loops, as you can see. And for example, we can take this frequency knob, I'll delete the automation here, and we can automate it. Here are the automations. We can, for example, go higher all the way here. Here we can go down, and let's open it up just slightly. Okay, so that would be it. I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you'd like to explore Ableton more, we are running a music production academy over on our website with start to finish courses on making tracks in various genres, as well as the Ableton Beginners course, which gives you all the info you need to get started with producing your own tracks. Make sure to subscribe, click the notification bell to get notified about new videos. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like and write us a comment, and I will see you in the next tutorials.
Hi, this video is sponsored by us. If you like these tutorials and want to support the channel, check out our website packed with online courses and professional sound packs. If you want to cut years of your learning curve, check the PML Beginner to Advanced Music Production program for Ableton Live. You will know Ableton inside out and learn how to write, produce, mix and master complete tracks. You learn step by step at your own speed, from an empty file to professional production, as if we're sitting side by side in the studio. Thank you for listening, and now let's get back to your tutorial.